Dimitri Roberts is a 9-year veteran of the Chicago PD. In the years since, he has founded a Chicago-based consulting firm which focuses on criminal justice reform. Dimitri, good to see you.
Same here.
What are your thoughts on this Dashcam video? I know it's hard to watch, but as a former police officer, what do you make of what we see?
Well, what you see, obviously, as we've seen from the Facebook Live videos, is a very unfortunate situation that unfolded very rapidly. But now what we see from the Dashcam video gives us a little more insight into what was going on with this officer emotionally, how he reacted to this situation, and really it gives us an opportunity to analyze what could have happened. And now that we're on the other side of a jury trial and understanding that this officer's been acquitted, where we can look to bridge this gap so this doesn't happen again, both to that citizen and where officers can be better trained, and we can look at this at a national level and understand that we still have a long way to go in the law enforcement community to right these situations.
As you know, Dimitri, last week, Officer Jeronimo Yanez was acquitted on charges related to the case. Was there anything that you see in the video that appears to you to be a breach of police protocol?
Well, let's talk about this on a very human level, and then I'm going to talk about it from a police procedural level. So somebody who is non-aggressive, who is strapped into a seatbelt, and who has children present in a vehicle is not an obvious threat. This officer clearly escalated this situation from the onset. From first recognizing Mr. Castile as a potential robbery suspect, so he was profiled, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but in this case it cost him his life. And when this officer approached the vehicle, he was already at a heightened state of awareness, and he was afraid. So when he got into confronting Mr. Castile on the traffic stop, we can clearly see that this officer placed his hand on his weapon, he escalated the situation, and within a minute of that officer doing that, Mr. Castile was dead. So we have to really ask ourselves the question on a human level is what was going through this officer's mind when he took Mr. Castile's life. On a police procedural level, it's very important to understand that that's not how we are trained to handle anything. I've worked in the toughest law enforcement neighborhoods probably in the country, and definitely in Chicago, and I can tell you I've approached dozens of cars, dozens of vehicles with offenders that in some cases did turn out to be armed, and none of them lost their lives. So it's unfortunate that this didn't play out in the justice system as most of us had hoped, but I think this is a clear opportunity for us to look at these issues a lot more closely and understand where we can bridge that gap.
And it's hard for us to put ourselves in the mindset of that officer, but Mr. Castile did say that he was armed, which is what I'm guessing you as a police officer, as a former police officer, would want to know, information that you would want to know right off the bat if the perpetrator or somebody that you had pulled over had a weapon or any kind of dangerous weapon on him in the car. And as you point out, his child was in the car. So it's just for a lot of people very difficult to understand that mindset that the police officer might have been in. But what do you make of his reaction, the officer's reaction after he fired those shots?
He's out of control, emotionally and professionally. He starts swearing. He starts going off. He goes on this process where he's trying to calm himself down. And you know, it's frustrating to me, and that's why you hear me stumbling over my words, because maybe you can't put yourself in the mind of what was going through that officer's head, but I can. I've been in those situations plenty of times. His reaction was completely unprofessional, and it shows where his mindset was, and it wasn't in the right place. We are trained to de-escalate situations. We are trained as officers to look at the totality of the circumstances. And in this case, that officer didn't take that into consideration. He addressed Mr. Castile as he was a criminal, and he approached this vehicle as it was already a threat. So shooting an unarmed man that's strapped in a seatbelt who has told you that he has a weapon is in nobody's mind, especially as a police officer, you can find justification for shooting anybody, and especially in a situation where you see that there's not a clear threat to you or anybody else. So I think it's very unfortunate, and his reaction, I think, shows us that he was not fit to be a police officer, and he probably shouldn't have been in that circumstance in the first place.
Dimitri Roberts, as always, we thank you for your analysis. Appreciate it.
Thank you.